We're here today with Nick Principe, who is going to be sharing Baba's kindness, which Baba has shared with Nick, and Nick's going to share it with us. And Nick, I don't know where you want to start with your stories of times with the Mandali or in India or here, but I do know that I think it was just yesterday you and I had a conversation about roses, and I hope that comes up someplace today. And I don't know if you want to start with it. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and you start wherever you like.
Thank you. Uh, Actually, if I forget, remind me about the roses. I will certainly get to it.
Okay.
But where I want to start, because my daughter, who now is 40 years old, uh, grew up with the Mandali. Bao was her surrogate grandfather. And as she got older, like many Baba children, she kind of searched for a lot of different things, and you know, I we she's had so much info about Baba. I don't really say much about it anymore. She's got the foundation she needs. But she challenged me one time, and it really threw me off because I would tell her, even when she was little, I would tell her stories about the Mandali, and she challenged me one time, and she was probably 15 or so, and she said, Daddy, the Mandali are not Baba. Why do the Mandali mean so much to you? And it really kind of caused me to think about that because, in a sense, she was very right, of course. The Mandali were not Baba. Um, and it's something that has been on my mind for 25 years, to be very honest with you. And as I was preparing for this meeting, the thought came to me that one of the early messages Baba gave the Mandali, he said, I'm going to teach you to be in the world, but not of the world. And as I pondered that, I realized that that was how he trained the Mandali to be in the world and not of the world, which meant that they functioned. Sort of Nariman was a businessman. Sarosh was had not only Baba's cousin, but he was in Manzil Amin. Then he became a colonel in the Indian Army, and then he became the mayor. Mayorji owned a paper factory in Pakistan. Elizabeth Patterson was a businesswoman to be reckoned. She was a force to be reckoned with. Um, so I, but yet they all kept a very strong hold and foundation with Baba. So to me, they really absorbed and became uh, able to function in the world, but not be swayed or influenced by the world. And I realized that that is why I have the feeling I do for them, because I think Baba left them as role models, that we can try to emulate them. Baba, I know one of the famous quotes associated with Baba, I've seen it up in so many places connected with Baba, understanding has no meaning. Well, Adi was challenged one time at the center, and Adi said, you have to have a very clear understanding of Baba. And somebody in the audience, when came time for questions, someone in the audience said, but Adi, Baba said understanding has no meaning. And Adi, in that, I won't even try, but that bellowing voice he said, Sir, don't tell me about that message. I was the one who read it out. He said, you're only getting half of Baba's message. He said, Baba's messages are given twofold. He said, one is statements based on his divinity. So when Baba says, you and I are not we but one, we cannot say, you and I are not we but one, because we don't have the experience. The best we can say is that Baba says, you and I are not we but one. But then Adi said, so that is why you can't understand the meaning of that because you don't have the experience. He said, however, when Baba gives us instructions on how to live, that you have to have a clear understanding about. Whether, and we all can, I'm sure, know, there's no reason to go down a list. We all know those things that Baba was very certain about, drugs and, sex outside of marriage and all those other things. But there's also personal things with each of us that we know when we're doing something and we shouldn't be doing it. So to me, that is again part of the function of the Mandali is to elucidate points because we're in the habit, by we I mean civilization, we're all in the habit of taking a soundbite, and a soundbite is understanding has no meaning. We don't know the context in which it was given. We haven't read out the entire a speech that was given that Adi was referencing. So we just have this one thing, and then we think we understand. A little side note with that. Some years ago, Arnavaz asked me about something personal that happened in my past, and I didn't want to answer it. And my reason, which I told her, was, Arnavaz, Baba said to live more and more in the present. So I don't want to talk about that. Her eyes flashed. She got really angry with me. She said, you have no idea what you're talking about. She said, this moment right now, in another moment, will be our past. The future right now, in another moment, will be our present. So don't tell me that you don't use that phrase because you don't know what it means. I have no idea what it means. It's one thing I labor over because again, it's a soundbite. You and I are not we but one. Or live more and more in the present, which is ever beautiful and stretches way beyond the past and the future. What does that mean? I don't know. It's which leads me actually to another point that I came up with is our use of language. And, I think Baba was very careful in use of language. We certainly know from Erich that if he got a word wrong in reading Baba's gestures, Baba would stop and one by one would go through the alphabet with him to correct him to make sure the word was right. There are some books, even the discourses, I believe, which were not really written by Baba. Baba would give a theme to whoever it was, Deshmukh or whoever it was. But Baba himself did not write the discourses as opposed to God Speaks, which Baba apparently would correct every word in God Speaks if it was wrong. So, when I asked Erich about that, he told me something very interesting. He said, the discourses are for the future. And he said, for now, you have Baba in the body. Because Baba said that for 100 years and a little more after his death, it's just as if he's still in the body. He said the discourses are for after that time is past. So, and I remember one time, and like I said, for me, I'm finding myself connecting a lot of dots as the years go by. I guess they call it experience. Is that yeah? It's just we need to be careful with language. We need to be careful about how we speak. We need to really pay attention to what Baba said. Mani one time, and she did the gesture uh, of wiping one's bottom. Mani did this like, and she said Baba told her, he said, you must, and he gestured this, he said, you must catch my words before they hit the ground. Don't use them like toilet paper. And Mani said Baba himself did that gesture like he was wiping his bottom. So that's how important Baba's words are. And I think we could make one word or one sentence or one paragraph, we could make it a meditation. You know, just the one like, what does it mean to live in the moment? But for me, it's just mind-boggling because I have no idea, because I don't experience it. I find myself, I'm either living in the past or the future, just like Arnavas said. Which leads me to the next point that I was thinking about, and Diana, we chatted about this a little bit, which is aging with Baba. And the funny thing is, as I've looked around, I don't recall anybody ever sort of dealing with this topic. I mean, maybe they have and I just missed it. But I think now that I'm in my 80s, I have an interesting vantage point. And I'm going to lead it off with this story. I was with the twins, Baba's nephews. This is many years ago. They were visiting here in Myrtle Beach, and I happened to be with them. And this was a private meeting. We were actually staying off center at the same house. So here we are having our morning coffee. The twins are there, their wives are there. Both Mani and Erich had just recently passed. My daughter was finished with college. And I don't remember if it was one of the twins or one of their wives asked me what my plans were for the future. And I very casually said, well, I don't really have any plans. And they asked me why. And I said, well, I'm ready to die. And they looked at me and they said, ready to die? What does that mean? I said, no, not suicide. I said, but I really don't feel like I have anything to live for. I was so attached to Mani and Erich after all the guidance and years of holding them so close to all of a sudden have them gone. My daughter, who now was graduating college, she was independent. I said, I just feel like I have nothing left really to live for. They got really angry with me. The one and only time that the twins got angry with me and their wives. They said, don't ever say that. Don't ever let us hear you say that again. They said, your duty is to stay in the body as long as you can. Because every day you have the opportunity to learn something new about Baba and to draw closer in his love. And when you die, you come back from where you left off. So you have to gain as much as you can now. And I have found that, I'll be 82 in a few weeks. And I can tell you that there's hardly a day that goes by now that I don't see the wisdom of that, because I can look at people now, and I don't mean that I have any psychic ability or anything like that, but I'm consider myself an observer of people, and I look and I think, wow, I wonder if these people have how many lifetimes they've been human before, because they're behaving like animals. And then you find somebody who is delicate and sweet and loving, and you think, wow, I wonder if that person is already had, where are they? And not that I know, I'm not saying I have any insight into it, but these kinds of, call it an observation, uh, is it's sort of like Baba gives me little insights into the functioning of the world, uh, and you know, and and some of it is private, so there's no need to go into that. But yeah, it's and I will say, even though I'm physically fairly limited, I'm having the time of my life because Baba, I have never felt so close to him. And I really feel that as we age, we, I have no contact anymore with anybody unless they come to see me here or doing this on Zoom. I live in a marvelous place. I get to swim. I go to, but I have real, even my kids, I don't see my kids that often. What that does, it gives me opportunity to think about Baba. So now, for instance, and I'm surprised at the number of people who don't know it. There's a live camera feed in the Samadhi. It's 24. Well, right now I have a clock that's set to India time. So it is 10 of 5 in India. At 7 p.m. here, it's 7 a.m. in India, or give or take a few minutes, and you can participate in the arti. And at 7 o'clock at night, it's morning there. In the morning, it's nighttime. So I could never do that when I was working. All of a sudden, I find myself, I'm not able to go to the center, but I'm able to visually and try to place myself in the samadhi, participate in the prayers, and it's something that the aging has permitted me to do. Because right now, you notice my phone is not ringing, and because I have almost no contact with anybody, and it's because Bob has taken that all away from me, and I don't see it as a problem. I see it as a gift. Adi was asked one time, "What have you gained from being with Baba?" And Adi said, "It's not what you gain; it's what you lose. It's what he takes away. He takes away all of our attachments, except our attachment to him." And he said attachment is when you miss something when it's gone. I don't miss my grandchildren. I don't miss my children. When I see them, when I hear from them, it's lovely. But my mind and my heart is too busy with Baba. And they can't fill those spaces. Alaba told me one time, he held up his hand like this. He said, always give Baba 51%. Everybody else gets 49%. But at least more than half of your attention, your mind, your heart, your attitude should be focused on. Those are the kind of hints that I would get from the Mandali and why they're so important to me. So, roses. I Now we're going back to the mid 70s. My first trip to India was life changing. With the Mandali, the first place, Goer told me to go to nursing school. I didn't even think about going to nursing school. She said, go to nursing. I did. And I think I've talked about that at a previous Zoom. So the whole thing was rather funny, but I did get my nursing license and worked at it for a while. And then Alaba called me into his room one time. It was his rest time. He would, all the Mandali would take a rest and he would be back laying on his bed, just with his back propped up a little bit. And he had me come in and sit down. And he told me to offer 3 roses to Baba every week, once a week. And he gave me a prayer to say with that. The prayer is personal, so I'm not going to go into that. But I got home and I started following that. I would go to the grocery store or the florist or wherever it was, and I would buy roses. And as time went by, probably weeks or maybe even months, I realized that it was very expensive. I wasn't making a lot of money at the time. And the roses were not predictable. Sometimes I would go and they were really nice, other times they weren't nice. And as fate would have it, I don't know how I got a catalog, a rose catalog. And I ordered 5 rose bushes. And these were supposed to be, sort of minimal care, easy to care for. And they were. And they were pink. But they were not what are the usual rose shape, which are actually what are called hybrid tea roses. These were more like almost like a wild rose. They had the odor of a rose. They looked like a rose, but they would open and they weren't really suitable for cutting and putting in a vase to offer to Baba. Well, one thing led to another, and before I knew it, I had 50 rose bushes. They were everywhere. I had mini rose bushes that were 8 or 10 inches tall, that were absolutely perfect, just like a hybrid tea, but they were little. I had one that was about 8 feet tall, called well, because there are, I forget all the technical things, but there are lots of different varieties of roses. The ones that are usually bought in florist shops are actually grafted. So there's the roots are from wild roses, which are the strongest, and then they graft um, whatever it is on it, and that produces the hybrid teas. And these are the ones that are very expensive to buy if you want to give somebody a dozen roses. So I ended up with this incredible, I had climbing roses on a trellis. I had them all over the place. Um, and it became an obsessive meditation because I would go out and I would sing to them. I would just, they were like my children. And mm, and God only knows what benefit it was for me, because I know that it benefited me in ways that I don't know why, but I think just the fact that I was doing it for Baba. And now that I'm in this apartment, I mean, you can't see them, but right over there are 3 red roses right in front of Baba's photo. By my bedside table, 3 red roses right Baba's photo. I offer one to Mara, one to Mani, also after. But now I go to the grocery store and I buy a dozen roses every week. I've missed very, very little, only when I've been hospitalized or in bad health. And it's Well, to me, not only is the rose a symbol, certainly in Persian poetry, Hafiz, Rumi, they would refer to, the rose and the thorn, of course. So you have the beauty of the rose coupled with the pain of the thorn, which is really kind of descriptive of the journey to God. So it's 7:30. I'm hoping that there's some questions or if anybody wants any more, because those are actually cover the notes that I wrote down, but I'm happy to share as much as anybody wants.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, those are beautiful thoughts that you've brought so far. And as you know, I love the rose story, symbol of love, among other things. Um, I want to get back, if you don't mind, to what you started with. Understanding has no meaning, and how difficult it is for us to understand so many things that Baba has said. But in particular, when I hear that, I'm reminded, I believe, of a poster. Understanding has no meaning, love has meaning, um, obedience has more meaning, and holding on to my Daman has most meaning. And, I think that's really very instructive. And I'm just wondering if you have any experiences with posters of Baba's words that you'd like to share. Any favorite posters?
Sure. There's one that really was life changing for me. This is going back probably again in the early 70s. Had a big poster of Baba that mm, something I'm sure somebody there knows the exact words, but it's something real love in making others happy.
Yeah, real happiness lies in making others happy.
Right. So I had that big poster in my kitchen. We had company over. I was married at the time. They had my sister-in-law and her husband, who knew about Baba, but a little bit, and some very old Baba friends who knew about Baba for before I found out about Baba, and I found out about Baba when he was still in the body. So, and they found out about him a year or two before I did. Not that that really means anything of and by itself, but when I tell you how this went, you'll understand what I'm getting at. So anyway, we had a lovely dinner, we had drinks, and I had to go to bed because I had work the next day, and nobody else had to get up early. So I excused myself, went to bed. And after an hour or two, I'm awakened by just noise. And I go in the kitchen, and this Baba Love, a friend of mine, has got a knife or a sort of like a fork with two prongs on it, and he's like wielding it like a sword. And my brother-in-law is tossing up pieces of fruit, bananas, oranges, and this Baba guy is stabbing or trying to stab these pieces of fruit. And of course, there's fruit juice everywhere, there's busted fruit. And I lose it and I throw everybody out. My sister in law and brother in law were staying in a camper parked in the driveway. I told them to get out. This Baba couple, I told them to get out. And my brother in law, who didn't know much about Baba, points to the poster that's on the wall. And he said, I guess you don't believe in that. Real happiness lies in making others happy. He said, I was having a good time. I was happy. And you're telling me, so I guess you don't believe in that. And I did not know how to answer it. Next time, and it really troubled me, and I think it's happened to all of us where we're kind of at one time or another, where you're kind of challenged by somebody because of a belief. with Baba and you don't know how to respond. At least that happened to me. So I'm with Erich and I get a chance to walk with him. And Erich always had a wonderful way. He'd say, "What's on your mind? What's troubling you?" And I told him. He said to me, "Brother," he said, "your obligation to make others happy is there, but never compromise your own values."
Could you say that again? Your voice just got softer and I didn't hear it all.
Never compromise your own values.
Okay.
And then he said this to me. At the time I was married. He said, "Nick," he said, "you're married. You're happily married to my wife." I said, "Yes." Now suppose, he said, and these are Erich's words. I'm not pulling up my own vocabulary. He said, "Suppose you know a woman and she comes to you and she says, 'Nick, it would make me very happy if you would have intercourse with me. Would you?'" And I said, "No, I wouldn't." He said, "That's exactly what it is. Never compromise your own values."
No.
That's as far as we have to go to make somebody happy. You know, if somebody were to hand you drugs and say, "Here, it would make me happy if you do this with me," what are you going to do? No, thank you. Wipe your hands and go away. So that I would say is probably, when it comes to a poster, an old message, that's the one that would still, to this day, is one of the guidelines. That's when I say the things that we can learn from the Mandali. Because I think Baba, at least this is my interpretation now, Baba was so busy with his universal work, whatever that is. I don't have any insight into it. But I don't think he was going to take the time to explain, break down every little sentence or paragraph or what. I think that's part of the reason he left the Mandali. Is the Mandali did that work. You know, Erich worked on God Speaks. You know, they were with Don Stevens and Ivy Deuce. These were you know, important people who had lots of connections with Baba. And then from there, now we have the technology that we can do this. You know, speak to people in a different part of the country, different part of the world. But in those days, that was all we had, was the Mandali. And I would suggest to anybody that their insights are still incredibly valuable. And, you know, there's so many videos with them that are available. You can just go online. You can just seeing them. Um, for instance, I have a friend. I'm not going to reveal who it is because I don't have the privilege of revealing her name. But she used to do massage for the Mandali. And she massaged Dr. Goer. Mani told her that massaging Dr. Goer was just like massaging Baba. You know, these people, I don't know how many lifetimes they already, you know, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, Baba can pluck anybody he wants from the universe to make them one of his Mandali. But I think for the most part, it's lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes of, you know, just doing the work and putting in the time that one can actually earn a spot. I find myself now, I used to think that I would aspire to be a Mandali. And I've just been reading the first volume of the Erich's book. I don't know if you've seen that. Scared the crap out of me. I'm about 2 or 3 paragraphs in, and I've read about the suffering that Erich went through that I never knew. I knew, as close as I was to Erich, I knew that at the end of his life, he had myasthenia gravis, um, and he had had a stroke. But I didn't know about all this other stuff that he had, surgeries that he had, and he would just have near death so many times. And this was even after started from childbirth and went all through his lifetime. This incredible suffering. And I thought to myself, oh my God, I don't want to do that. I don't want to suffer like that. So I've stopped asking Baba to consider me for a Mandali position. Instead, I ask him if I can be a gardener or just one of the servants around where he lives. You know, I'll empty the toilets. I'll do it, whatever. But yeah, just I mean, eventually, as Val used to tell me, he said, you're welcome. He said, you certainly can tell Bobby your preferences, but you must be resigned to his wish and will.
Mhm.
So that's how I try to live, is that, okay, Baba, this is my preference. I don't want to suffer like that, but if if it's what's to be, then you have to give me the strength. As a matter of fact, I don't know, the title of the book is Befitting a Fortunate Slave, but on the bottom it says, a quote from Marriage. He said, with his grace, anything is possible. And I certainly, it's sort of like I have the devil and the angel, one on each shoulder. So the angel's telling me about how sweet and generous and kind Bobby is, and the other shoulder is going, yeah, he's just. Mansari used to call Baba sneaky sweetie. He said, he would give you, as they all said, he said he'd give you bitter medicine with one hand, feed you ice cream with the other. And so, and the other poster that I remember, well, it's actually, I found out about Baba in a very unusual way. I did not have an individual who told me about Baba. I had the opportunity, this was about 1967. I had the opportunity to rent a house on the beach in Cocoa Beach, Florida. And I didn't know it, but at the time there were quite a few people who were just finding out about Baba. And this house, I was going to convert into a hair salon, and also it had big living room and one or two bedrooms, and a kitchen and an attached garage. The attached and an outbuilding. And the attached garage was where I was going to live. I made it an apartment. There was not a piece of furniture in the place. There were, between the living room and one of the bedrooms or whatever the rooms were used for, I don't know, was an open bookshelf. And the only thing that was in there that was movable was a photo of Baba with a little typewritten message on the bottom that said, I have one message to give age after age, and that is to love God. That was how I found out about Baba. Then I would have to ask others, about Baba. And then I found out that I met people there that were actually traveling overland to try and meet Baba. There was a woman there who uh, had worked or was going to work on the New York World's Fair, and they had a Baba booth there that Jane Haynes had set up. So there were really quite a few people there that knew about Baba. Um, all sort of young hippies at the time. Um, you know, so that was my intro to Baba. Was there. The other poster that made a huge impact on me. As a matter of fact, I have it hanging in my bedroom. Is as Baba was getting ready to drop the body, he sent Alaba to bring the Hafiz quote, befitting a fortunate slave. And I had bought that in India in the 70s, had it framed, and it's hanging in my bedroom. And yeah, to me, every once in a while, uh, I read that, and I'm reminded of what it says. And I think each of us knows. Reread it for yourself, for each of us. But just knowing that I don't understand, just befitting a fortunate slave. That's why Erich's book is titled that way. That's what Erich would say. He said, I'm Baba's slave. He said, I exercised my free will to become his slave. That's the only free will we have. That's what Erich would say. So, and that, of course, is one of the first quotes there. The other, about what you hear from the master, never say it is wrong, because, my dear, the fault lies in your own incapacity. That, they say, that couplet from Hafiz, one could meditate on that for one's lifetime, because all the truth is right there. Everything we need to know. But I think Baba's given us so many platforms, because we each have different personalities. Some people, Alaba, one time when he was at my house, he said, some go to Baba this way, some go to Baba this way. He said, but eventually they end up in the same place. So, some people find out about Baba and deal with all the intellectual understanding, and that's their, I see that, as we all do. People who want to give their explanation about what Baba meant, in God Speaks. I just, and I think that's fine. That's their path. For others, it's just the heart. It's, you know, Baba himself would say, I know he told, well, I won't say who, but I know he told some of his own family. He said, you don't have to read anything. He said, just read the book of your heart. Because when we read about Baba's life, and I think that's important, but it's sort of like a child in elementary school learning the alphabet. You have to do that, but eventually you don't study your books anymore. You have to go out and go to work. You get a job, and so I think that's where we are with Baba. It's after you have enough time, whatever that is, whether it's one lifetime or many lifetimes, eventually you have to go to work, and that work is just whatever you have up here is bringing it down to the heart. But I would say those are the posters, even though that photo was not a poster. I still can see it in my mind's eye, which is now, almost 60 years. And I don't know what happened to that photo. I didn't take it. I left it there. I have no idea who put it there. Just again, his kindness, because he gets us however he wants us. And as I know what Erich again had told me, he said, there is no path to follow. He said, become the path. have Baba looking for you. And, do something, involve him in your life in such a way that when he comes back, he asks for you.
It's beautiful, really beautiful. Excuse me. Wow. If I feel that's just a beautiful place to stop. So I don't know if you had planned to say more, but I think that's such a lovely, lovely closing.
Um, well, you know, Angela told me this is 2 hours.
No, she did not. No,
She did. She told me it's 2 hours. I am fine with whatever anybody wants.
it's
I
one.
don't know if 1 hour, that's fine. Thank you. Because the one thing I know, and I saw that even with Bao, and I certainly don't put myself in a position of the Mandali. When Bao first came to my house, there were over 200 people that came to see me. We had, I mean, it was a madhouse. We put speakers out in the backyard. There wasn't even enough room to have anybody in the house. We had closed circuit TV. We had a video camera with Bao out on our big Florida room, and we had our television. We hooked a. I didn't do it, but there were people there who knew how to do it. They hooked a feed up to the so people who were in the living room could watch it on the television. Uh, but after 8 or 9 visits, the crowds diminished. People thought they were just hearing the same stories over and over again. And I I think to myself, like I say, I'm certainly not putting myself in a position like one of the Mandali. But when she told me 2 hours, the first thing I thought of is, my God, nobody's ever wanting to hear my name again after 2 hours.
I doubt. I really doubt that. You have the next program. You have isn't that much time if you want it, but no, she doesn't schedule 2 hours. Not.
Well, I certainly look with everything that's been going on with me, with my health issues, pardon me. I certainly may have misheard it or misunderstood. Um, but in any event, whatever anybody wants, I'm fine with.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, you say people stop coming to see Bao over a period of years.
Um,
Maybe they forgot that, like bedtime stories, it's so nice to hear them over and over again.
well, that plus I tell you, John Connor used to travel with Bao at the time. I don't know if you know John.
I do.
He lives in Durham. He's actually in rough shape now. I think he's had a stroke, if I'm not mistaken. But John used to sit there. He lived with Bao in India. He traveled with him everywhere. And I asked him if he ever got tired of it. He said no. He said, because I hear something new almost all the time. That's what I found with Bao. And, just I think you never know. I kind of liken it to when Baba would start throwing pieces of fruit, grapes or chocolate or prasad. You got to be attentive because you don't want to miss it. And for me, being with Bao, some of the things that I got from him, the treasures I got from him were, as a matter of fact, David Fenster, who his son-in-law had actually asked me at one point, to relay some stories because he knew that anybody who was with him was going to hear something different. You know, for instance, I asked Bao one time, I said, how did the first person ever decide what berry or grape was safe to eat? You know, and somebody just come out of a cave, and he said, don't forget, Bao said, they've been perfect masters on the planet since the beginning of time. I had just never thought of it that way. Never thought of it that way. But someplace, here are the Neanderthals roaming around, or whatever one believes in, or dinosaurs, or whatever. But as long as there was life on the planet, there were perfect masters. It's mind-boggling to think of that.
Bao told you that?
Yes.
That as long as there has been life on the planet, there have been perfect masters.
Perfect. You know, does that mean there were just a dozen people living someplace in near a cave? I don't know. He didn't elaborate, but that's what he told me. And really, the fact is, God has been directing the universe since the beginning of time. There's no time when he has ignored it. We don't understand it. You know, we'd prefer that he do things the way we think they should be done. But last I checked, I've not gotten a message from Baba asking me my opinion about his plans. So, yeah, Bao would share these things, and those people that were fortunate to be there. Here's a simple thing. And I had witnessed this with Erich once before. When I was in India, I was Erich's birthday. I had bought a birthday cake for Erich. He took one look at it. He said, "Is there enough for everybody?" I said, "No." He said, "Then I won't touch it." You know, you can't just. So here, Bao is at my house, and somebody comes and they made cookies for Bao. And I had to tell them no, because you can't give Bao cookies and not share them with everybody. There weren't enough for everybody. If you want to give Bao cookies, you do it someplace else, not when he's in a meeting with 50 people. Because he's not going to eat a cookie and everybody else sit there with none. You know, the Mandali were all about making sure everybody was treated equally. Alaba one time at my house, he would kick off his sandals and they slid under the chair he was sitting on. When the meeting was over, he went to stand up. He looked for his sandals. I bent down to grab them. He got upset with me. He said, "Don't touch him. Don't touch him." I looked at him as why. He said, "You mustn't touch my sandals." And of course, I realized, because in India, touching somebody's sandals is paying them obeisance. It's a form of, and we should only be wanting to touch Baba's sandal. That's how serious the Mandali were about these things. Those people that were there and witnessed it, they saw it. There may have been others who saw it, it didn't register for them. Bao would start off every meeting. You know, there's a pamphlet that's everybody's seen It's My Wish. When people would ask Bao, well, you had Baba's orders, we didn't have Baba's orders, he would ask me to read my wish. And the very first thing on there is to fulfill your responsibilities. He said that is the most important thing. That's number one. Fulfill your responsibility. And that's for each individual to figure out what that is. So that seems like a good place to end.
Well, yes, but I was going to also see if any of the persons present would like to make a comment or ask a question.
Absolutely. I see names, but I don't see any faces.
No,
They're,
I have
and
no
that's
face,
fine.
no faces. But if either one of you would like to say something, please open your mic and ask your question or comment, make a comment. Nothing's happening. So maybe that's telling us that they're just fine with the way things are.
I am too.
Good.
And
Sharon.
Sharon, thank you for the heart.
Well, thank you, Nick. It's just been really a very enjoyable time together. And Caroline sending hearts as well. So
Oh, wonderful. Thank
yeah.
you.
So we're
Is that Caroline from Myrtle Beach?
I don't know, but
Uh,
we're all heart centered here.
all right.
Okay. Thanks
All
again.
right.
Nick. It's been really, really wonderful. Jay Bob.
My pleasure. Jai Baba. Jai Baba. Let me see. I have to figure out what to do here. Never know.